and Emergency Management, ODPEM, welcomes you to its digital town hall meeting at the MLGCD at 61 Hagley Park Road, Kingston. Today, we'll be speaking about our markets across the island and food security in light of the coronavirus. My name is Delmaris White, and I'll be your moderator. We welcome our listeners on Nationwide News Network, Power 106, Mellow FM, NCU Radio, and PBCJ. We are streaming live on the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development's ODPEM PBCJ's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages. You can call in at 876-618-8248 or WhatsApp or text us at 876-564-8348 or 876-298-6508. Our panelists this evening, we have His Worship Senator Councillor Delroy Williams, Mayor of Kingston, His Worship Councillor Norman Scott, Mayor of Spanish Town, Mr. Richard Thompson, the Acting Director General at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Dr. Curdell Campbell, Acting Director of Emergency Medical Services in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and Mr. Dunstan Whittingham, the President of the Jamaica Vendors, Higglers and Markets Association. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to invite you to help me welcome the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, who will bring the opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Delmaris. Good evening, Jamaica. Let me first of all welcome our viewers and our listeners to the first in a series of technology as we bring the message through technology to Jamaicans here and across the globe. We start this series of technology as we bring the message through technology to Jamaicans here and across the globe. We start this series of town hall meetings discussing a very critical component of Jamaica's development, our markets. Markets plays a critical role in the lives of many Jamaicans. Thousands of Jamaicans have gone through primary school, basic school, prep school, high school, university through the efforts of their parents. Most vendors within our market systems are women. So women play a pivotal role in the society, in our market system. We have a very vibrant market economy across the country, and there are some staggering figures as it relates to markets in Jamaica. And I want to share this information with our viewers and our listeners this evening because I think it's important that we understand the importance of the market trade as we tackle the coronavirus disease here in Jamaica. There's a total of 77 markets island-wide in Jamaica as we speak, and a total vending population. And when I speak of vending population, I'm making reference to those persons who are registered, whose information is captured within the formal system of the municipal corporation. There are some 22,000 registered vendors across Jamaica. And it is important that in this figure, we look at what I would like to call the epicenter of the trade, and that is Kingston and St. Andrew. It is amazing that out of the 77 markets here in Jamaica, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation accounts for almost 30 of those markets spread across the corporate area. In my own constituency, of the 17 markets that is situated in downtown Kingston, 11 is in the constituency of West Kingston. But the reason why we are here this evening is to examine the future of our markets under the present situation. Can the market survive in its present form? Are the vendors and those who support the vendors, are they complying in the way they ought to? Is it practical within this setting, within our markets, to have the social or distance that we want to practice? Is the proper hygiene, is the proper sanitation available in our market space across the country? When you look at Charles Gord Market in Montego Bay, the Carnation Market in Kingston, Maypen in Clarendon, Otrius in St. Anne, we are talking about major markets within major town centers across the country. And therefore, this panel that has been put together will examine the pros and the cons and to look at how we deal with this crisis by ensuring that we protect food security. The question is, how do we get a hold of this situation? It is clear that when you take downtown Kingston, on a daily basis, more than 10,000 Jamaicans traverse the market district in downtown Kingston. It is estimated that more than 100,000 Jamaicans do business within the market district on a weekly basis in downtown Kingston. And that is an high volume of traffic in a time like this. And so as we start the proceedings here this evening, I just want to say to the Jamaican people that we are cognizant of the concerns that have been raised. Many questions have been asked, and we are going to try to seek to find some of those answers over the next 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Mackenzie. At this time, I'd like to invite His Worship Councillor Delroy Williams to just make some comments in terms of giving us an update where we are with the markets. The Minister had mentioned that we would have started some cleaning activities, some sanitization, and what it is that we want persons to do when they go to the markets to do their vending.
Well, good afternoon, Minister and other panelists. And good afternoon, social media, Kingston and the wider Jamaica. For us, the markets have become a feature of city life and a very significant feature of commerce within the city. It's not something that we take lightly at the municipality, and it's not something that we should take lightly as a society. The commerce in the market district is quite significant, and it's quite significant to the city's economy and how the city grows. For us, the vendors play a very important role in city life and in city commerce. Asked if we are comfortable with the current arrangements within our markets across the municipality, the answer is obviously no. There is no one at the level of the municipality that is comfortable with how the markets are, how we operate the markets, manage the markets, and how the relationship between vendors and the municipality. But it requires careful and strategic moves. It's careful and strategic because we understand the importance of that kind of commerce to the economy of the city. And any shock could cause serious repercussion within the city. But so the municipality has been spending a lot of time over the last, I would say, 18 months and crafting and redesigning the market. We have to redesign for enforcement. We have to redesign for commerce. We have to redesign for flow, traffic flow, and the movement of pedestrians. So it's not as easy as we think. And our engineers have, over the last, I've said, 18 months, been paying a lot of attention to the design within the market district. And so there are a lot of things that will come from that. Pretty soon, over the next 3 months, we should be completed with that process, and then we can move into that. I just quickly say that also that there are a lot of works that we plan to begin in the market, and a lot of them supported by the minister. There's a lot of enforcement we can do within the market. But from our standpoint, I believe that as a municipality, it's harder for us to enforce without first taking major steps in terms of renovation of our market space. And so as soon as we begin to renovate the market space and to redesign the entire market district, then there will be a lot of changes and enforcement to accompany that. Because our standpoint is that at that time we feel that we would have been giving back and structure and order within which our vendors can operate. And so it would be easier for us to enforce at that time.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm sorry, thank you, Mayor. This time I'd like to just bring in Mayor Norman Scott in terms of what it is you're doing to prepare in the light of the coronavirus, the markets in your area, and what it is you want the people to do when they come to the market.
Good evening, Minister. Good evening, our moderator and my colleague, Councillor Mayor Williams, other members of the panel. Of course, the Greater Jamaica who is watching and ensuring that we don't make much mistakes. As it relates to Spanish towns, St. Catherine on a whole, we have 3 major markets in St. Catherine, namely Spanish Town, Linstead, and Old Harbour. I realize that Minister never remember that we carry Akigo Linstead Market, and it is one of the significant institutions in Jamaica. However, since the first case of the confirmed COVID-19, we have taken significant steps to put in place the washing stations where persons, as they enter the markets, there is a facility to wash their hands. In Spanish Town, there are about 4 of those stations. In Linstead, we have 2. In Old Harbour, there's 2. In a total, we have about 7 markets in St. Catherine that are operational. As I said, 4 are operated by the municipalities, and the others are privately operated. Now, we have been doing washing and cleaning of markets for a very long time. It's nothing new since the COVID-19. However, since COVID-19, we have increased our numbers of times for the month. We used to do it once per month, now we're doing every week. As it relates to the vendors are very difficult people to I can't say control, I would say to cooperate and coexist with. However, we have to find a modus of operandi in which we, as the municipalities, try to get to them. And so, since this new restrictions as it relates to the opening and closing hours, we have had challenges, and I'm telling you, challenges as it relates to closing at 2. It is a difficult proposition to get these vendors out of the market at 2 p.m. I'm glad that Minister and the government have looked into the situation and to increase for the 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, to allow them to go up until 6 p.m. It is something that I know is going to significantly assist them. Minister said a lot about the importance of markets and the vendors. Vendors are, as we all know, the whole market system came in ever since the abolition of slavery, and it is how it evolves. Today, Minister and my colleague, we are really grappling with what it is we want to really put in place for markets. I know the spaces has significantly been outgrown by the numbers of persons. I know for sure, Minister, when you saw the figures for the vendors for St. Catherine, over 5,000 vendors St. Catherine has registered, and these are registered persons. And for example, Spanish Town Market was only built to accommodate something like 100 vendors. Today, we have over 2,000 vendors registered for Spanish Town Market. Linstead Market, again, it has overgrown its capacity. But we have to find a way to incorporate as much of these persons, because if they don't stay inside the space, they are going to go elsewhere, and it is where we're going to find ourselves in serious trouble if these persons are not accommodated within this space and they have to go and find other space. Because it's one thing I'll tell you, where there is buyers, you're going to have sellers.
All right, thank you so much, Councillor. It's a good point that you made, and I wanted to just say a shout out to the people in Linstead and the Carrier Akigo Linstead Market talk that you made. The song is important because later on in the program we're going to talk about the feel up squeeze up thing, right? Because we're talking about Corona and we're talking about how it is when you're operating in that space. What are some of the behavior that we want to encourage our citizens to do? We have with us, and I want to probably just jump to Dr. Campbell at this time, because I know I read somewhere where it says, in recent weeks, we have begun to work remotely. Some are laid off from school. Schools have been canceled. Classes are out for weeks. Restaurants, retail stores, bars, gyms, other gathering places have closed. Some major events were called off. We talk about our own sporting events and some of our religious services across the country. These closures are all attempts to force social distancing, a critical, important public health intervention that can help to stop the transmission of the coronavirus. Social distancing, health authorities argue, can dramatically slow the rate at which the infection spreads, helping to ease the burden on the healthcare system. Best practice requires maintaining at least 6-foot distances between ourselves. At this point, I'd like to just throw to Dr. Campbell. Can you, in that space, in the market, what it is that you'd like to advise the Jamaican population to do, both the sellers and the buyers, as we say in Jamaica?
Thank you, Delmars. Honorable Minister of Jamaica, the question has become very relevant. Just yesterday, the Chief Medical Officer made a very impassioned plea to Jamaica to maintain social distancing. She also highlighted the need to maintain that 1 meter distance, because that by its verse, the actual safe distancing can reduce the amount of contacts in our system. Just appreciate that one person can infect at least 407 others. And if we maintain the social distancing, our numbers will remain very low, we'll flatten our curve. If we don't, and especially in the space such as the market, we can see numbers as high as 58,000 Jamaicans being affected by the end of the month. We want to prevent that. And of course, you have to appreciate that our healthcare system will become very burdened. We may not be able to cope, and we want to encourage all the users within our markets to maintain that safe 1 meter distance.
All right, thank you so much. At this time, we have with us Mr. Dunstan Whittingham. He's the president of the Jamaica Vendors, Higglers and Markets Association. And so you represent a very important grouping that helps us in the markets to acquire all the wares, the important nutrient that we need to get from all the food that we need. What is it that you think, based on what we're experiencing now in our country and across the world, the coronavirus, what is it that you need to be saying to your constituent so that they can better serve us and that we can benefit from the markets?
Well, Honorable Minister, and always in gathering here. First, I'd like to address the government of Jamaica for what they are doing. And I'm saying this with no strings attached, in the sense that our Prime Minister is one who cares. And when the last poll shows that the Prime Minister is one of the most popular persons in this country, I remember at many meetings at MICA, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Agriculture and Fishery, we were championing that there were serious days ahead when we were looking at the coronavirus, which is now COVID-19. It's only show that this does not start in 2020. It was there from late November of last year. And when we look at the situation in Jamaica, there was a lot of blame game going on. But the government of Jamaica have listened to the people. For example, the recent cry about closing market at 2 o'clock, from in the morning till 2. And the government listened. If you don't have a government who does not listen to people, they are going nowhere. So we are glad that the government is listening. But we out there who is on the ground playing our part. We wanted to make sure that our vendors and traders keep that distance and keep it as best as they can. I remember the Sunday when I was here with our mayor, and we're there in Coronation Market, and we have a press brief. We realized that the situation of socialization, distancing, and segregation would be a serious thing to deal with in the coming future. And when the market was sanitized and the market reopened that Thursday, it was business as usual. Meaning to say, if you go to Coronation Market, which is one of the biggest markets in the Western Hemisphere, you find that clustering. And if you caption what is happening in New York, and as the doctor just said a while ago, one person can infect so many people, so keep that distance. And I remember Monday when the mayor called me and was talking to me about getting out there on the ground to sensitize our people about the seriousness of this. The number was climbing. It was moving from 9 to 16, then it go to 24, and it's up now to 36.
38 today.
38 the last count. And we were saying that when the market closed at 2, the people in the market environment, which is the market district and the business district, should shut down at least 3, 4 o'clock. The reasons for that, there were a lot of things were not obeyed to. Sanitizing your hands, taking exchange of money from people, nobody giving a chance to design a method of receiving money where you would stretch something forward and then the money would have dropped in there. It would have been sanitized, whether they use alcohol or anything, before that vendor touch it. And then it is being received. They see them in exchange for change given back. We have seen the crisis develop because taxes is what bring commerce to the market district. And we realized that the government had said that on transportation you should go one less. There is a 4-seater, a 7-seater, and even on the public transport they say nobody's standing. So these are bringing about awareness to people in all different areas of operation. What we know very much is that when we do that underground campaign, we found out that vendors are our members, and even people who are non-members are hard people to deal with. And as may have said, that vendors and higglers, ICI, itinerant, you have different names in which you categorize them according to their registration. We find out they were not adhering, and that's why we support any measures at that time to get them to conform to the situation. And as I said that, when we hear the news out of Jamaica House on Monday, that an extension have been given from 2 up until 6, we were saying that at least we get away with 2 hours over, because we were looking at 4 o'clock in the evening. Everybody would have locked down, whether in the market or outside the market. Lock it down, everybody go home.
All right, thank you so much, Johnson. At this time, I'd like to, before we start taking the questions from the various media houses, and we have some social media questions that we're going to get into, I have also on the panel the Acting Director General from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, who at this time we'd like to probably just give us an overview basically on what it is that the office is doing to try to assist this process, the coordination process with the coronavirus, and how will that impact the markets as we're trying to rally and group so that the Jamaican population can continue to go to our markets, get the nutrients that we need to stay healthy and free from the coronavirus.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Minister, Your Worships, members of the panel, persons in the wider social media environment, good evening. First, let me have just a quick overview as it relates to food security in general and looking at our markets. Food security looked at the availability of sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for persons in general in order to meet their dietary needs. In our case, where we're looking at 3 components: access, availability, and your nutritional component. When we look at what is happening as it relates to our market space and agriculture in general, when you talk about disaster risk reduction, you look at about 23% of developing countries, whenever time there is a disaster, the agricultural component is impacted by that kind of emergency. Our present emergency is around public health, and it does have a great impact as it relates to food security, and especially access more so than availability at present when it comes to our market space. We are talking about the aspect of social distancing. You would have heard Dr. Campbell speak earlier about social distancing, and also if you look at a wider spread, the question would now arise in terms of access. How would persons be able to access our market space in order to get the necessary food that is required for nutrition? So that has been a big discussion, and our minister has been leading in that respect in terms of looking at how the markets would function, how you're looking at availability, how you're looking at having sufficient food for the general public around food security. So the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, as the National Disaster Coordinator, is an essential part of the process that has been a part of the overall response for the outbreak of COVID-19 in Jamaica. And we have coordinated a number of aspects of the response, looking at in terms of areas that were quarantined. We have some areas still under quarantine, one particular area that is still under quarantine. How we ensure that food supply were provided for those communities, working in conjunction with a cell of the National Emergency Operations Center, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, to ensure that food, and we're talking about food security, that food are provided for these communities, and that they are getting the necessary nutritional sustenance that is needed for their daily living and their daily lifestyle. Right. So we play an important role in the overall response and an important aspect in terms of what have to do within the market space, given the linkages between the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management and the local authorities through the part disaster coordinators and how we ensure that the aspect of disaster risk reduction is being looked at a wider level.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. This time I'd like to throw back to the Minister, but before I do that, I'd like to remind our listeners, if you're streaming with us, we want for you to send your text or your WhatsApp to 876-564-8348 or 876 298-6508, or you can call in at 876-618-8248. Thank you.
I want to come back to the question that was posed by Mayor Scott, Mayor Williams, and by Dunstan. And this speaks about the control in the markets. I want to give the country some numbers which should allow us to take stock of what is it we are talking about. In the parish of St. Thomas, we have 4 markets. Clarendon, 7 markets. St. Mary, 7 markets. Hanover, 2 markets. Trelawney, 4. St. Catherine, 9. Mandeville, 4. St. James, 2. Portland, 2. St. Anne, 8. Westmoreland, 4. St. Elizabeth, 7. Kingston and St. Andrew, 17. No. 17 markets in the corporate area. If you take Michael Manley and Tavares Market out of it, as two of the least populated market centers, then you are speaking about daily operations. That is cause for concerns. I want to say this because the government is cognizant of the fact that the livelihood of the thousands of Jamaicans, and we also take into consideration that it is not just only the vendors in the markets that rely on the trade, but there is the anchored people. There are those persons who will carry your load. So there's a wide cross-section.
Farmers.
The trucks that brings the produce with the vendors into the market space. It's a wide constituency of Jamaicans that rely on the market for survival. But we are also mindful that in that mix is a great number of Jamaicans who will not conform with any rules or regulations whatsoever. And these are the numbers that we have to encounter with. And I heard Dunstan, the consideration for the extension was made after consideration by the cabinet when the question was raised. Because when you look at the days, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays are the 3 most potent market days across the country. On a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you get a spin-off. And then we decided to maintain the Sunday. But what we are saying, Mayors and Dunstan, the markets must be closed at 2 on the days that are specified under the regulations, and the days that are specified from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., the vendors must comply, because failure to comply, you are going to be forcing the hands of the government to take a decision that will have rippling effects across the country. And we have to think about the economy of the country in making these decisions. So what is it we are asking the vendors, and not just the vendors, the shoppers, the persons who come to support the trade? What is it we are asking them to do? Is to try and practice as best as possible the requirements that we are asking of each and every one. The question has been raised about the state of some of the markets, and we're going to speak to that a little bit later on. But despite all those challenges, the Vendors Association, Dunstan, have a major responsibility to educate your members. And therefore, it is the responsibility of the municipal corporations to ensure that there is a good working relationship on the ground with the vendors, so at least we can deal with the issues that face us in the markets. We have made this arrangement to facilitate the extension of vending, because the complaints, I saw some pictures coming out of Montego Bay, saw some pictures coming out of downtown Kingston. Those are frightening scenes. In a time when we are asking people to keep a safe distance. And I can only use this medium to those who are listening to appeal for there has to be a special sense of purpose by our Jamaicans who use these facilities. Help us to help you. Because at the end of the day, we will not compromise the wider Jamaica to facilitate persons who are not prepared to toe the line.
Okay, thank you, Minister. At this time, I have a few questions. These are from social media, mainly from the parishes. So we're going to start off with St. James. Lynette Rowe from Orange in St. James is asking, how does the government intend to deal with the crowding in the markets given the social distance in practice to be observed? Is it possible for shoppers in the markets to observe the 10-person limit for public spaces?
Well, I just tried a while ago to explain the impossible. It is a fact that you can't put in the same regiment as you would in a supermarket where it is easier for you. One of the problems with our markets that our markets are open. And because of the openness of the markets, it sort of creates much more strain. But I believe that the mayors are sensitive of the situation, and over time, I believe they will find answers as to how to try to limit as best as possible the contact within the markets. I know it sounds impossible, but it is a possibility that must be made possible.
Do we have any other response on that?
Yeah, on that same issue, we were looking at how to help in this. We plan to meet with the Taxis Association in the sense that since there's a reduction in the amount of passenger they take, both public and private transportation, we are saying at this moment that in these market vicinities and market space, that we are going on the ground to get established numbers. And vendors have been practicing that we call Duke Street, the Wall Street of downtown Kingston, because it carries financial institution, lawyer's office and all of this. And a person will stay in that office and take their phone and call Janet, Sonia, and all the dear goods, and those, when we used to have the black scandal now, they call in and make that order. That same taxi man today who is crying, remember Mona shut down, all schools shut down, they're losing that $50 head student, they're losing all those traffic going into the University of the West Indies. Turn some of them into courier and bearers, where you will call into the marketplace, your order is placed, and it is being delivered, because in most cases when a shopper comes to the market, you pay either $250 or $300 up to $400 for a turnoff. So it wouldn't be a problem, and they would be earning from that missing passenger. So we are on the ground now looking at that alternative so as to ease that pressure inside of the market district, because it just cannot work that way.
Right,
we don't want another New York City here.
Thank you, Dunstan. This time, Mayor Scott, you wanted to make a comment regarding that.
Yes. Minister had indicated in the initial stage that the SDC would be responsible for disseminating information. And just to say that we want to ramp up this public education system in the market districts, in the transportation centers, where we parked public address systems that would be blasting the information. And we hope that with this, our citizens will listen. And I know we have a tendency for something go through one ear and go pass through the other. But then with the constant blasting of the information in and around the district, it is going to be able to get to our citizens.
And I think too we have noticed that our citizens are very receptive now, because when you watch the news, you see them on social media, they're responding. I think they really want to be encouraged and to be told how it is they need to behave. So the social responsibility individually for you and your family when you go to the market, how you treat with getting the fruits, getting what it is you need, is going to be left up to you also to decide on how you protect yourself. I'd like to jump into another question. This one is from Stony Hill, St. Andrew, and this is about sanitation. Sanitation and cleaning of the Stony Hill market has been done. However, is there any plans to carry out improvements to the facility?
I will defer that question to Mayor Williams, because that is his domain.
Yes, but Minister has been very committed to the renovation of the Stony Hill market, and in his previous budget.
Yes, it will be.
Yes, so yes, it will be done. The Ministry of Local Government is spearheaded that effort through the municipality, and so yes, it will be done.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from Manchester, Lydia Joyce Porus. As a child, the Porus market was bustling and full of activities, but the location has deteriorated significantly over the years. Are there any plans to restore the market to its former glory?
There are a couple markets across the country that is listed that, because of the population slide in most of these towns, those markets are no longer operating at the level that it ought to, and the Porus market is one such market. I don't want to make a pronouncement on the Porus market, but I will share the concerns of the person who sent that message with the mayor for us to get a response on it.
Okay, I have a question from a business operator in downtown Kingston. The complaint is that he's losing business daily as the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation fails to enforce the no vending policy in restricted areas.
And we're aware of some complaints. We have been looking at formalizing vending. It's not as easy as persons would make it look. There's one thing that we always have to understand. Vendors have played a very significant role in the survival of downtown Kingston, what it is now. When many were leaving downtown and moving elsewhere, the vendors remained. And a few shop owners, I mean, we could call names, but I'll leave that. The fact that they remained kept downtown alive. Otherwise, downtown would have died long ago. So we owe a debt of gratitude to our vendors. They are business operators. The commerce downtown is significant to our city. And so it's not just as to say that we're removing vendors. Because if you, Minister, speak to the numbers and of registered vendors, I would say to you that the number of vendors is almost 2 times, 3 times that. Okay. Because the number of unregistered vendors is more than the number of registered vendors. I can tell you. So you're dealing with thousands of persons. And we are, as I've said, we have spent the last 18 months looking at the market district, designing for purpose. Designed to change behavior, designed to control pedestrians, to control traffic flow, and to enhance commerce.
All
that
right.
is also important.
Thank you
So
very much, Mayor.
We'll deal with it.
All right. At this time, I'd like to just remind our listeners, you can text us or send us a WhatsApp message. The numbers are 876-564-8348 or 876-298-6508. And I have from the text line, there are persons who are Minister and our other colleagues on the platform. They are sending in suggestions based on the discussion that we had. So a Facebook user, Diana Watson, says we should introduce flea markets for produce selling on Thursdays or Saturdays in unused open lots. Any comments to that?
I think that is a worthy idea. But again, when you look at the overcrowded areas that are affected, there are limited such space that is available, especially in the corporate area and in places like St. James and in St. Catherine. It is something that is worthy of consideration. But, you know, over the years, what we have had is that we have had now a marriage of both trade, because in days gone by, the haberdashery trade would be separate from the ground provision. Now everybody is in the same thing, so there is this marriage. So someone who comes to buy coal, now I don't know how many people know that grass yard still exists. The coal yard still exists. And the coal yard still maintains, you know, that existence of selling coal. What we have noticed also is that the fish market, you used to have fish market that is separate from the normal market. You know, in the days of Carnation Market, when Carnation Market was alive, you could go to a section and you could get your roots. You go to a section, you get your fruits. So the market was sectionalized. Now it has all become one major cooking pot. So you find to separate the trade is going to be difficult, but the idea is an idea that I think we can take into consideration to see how best it will be able to work.
Okay, thank you very much. We have someone from the text line, and this possibly is a question for Dr. Campbell. The listener says, went to the market and used wipes to hold the fruits. A nurse cursed me saying that I shouldn't do that. I do not intend to get ill, but my mother needs fruits because of her diet. I don't know if I'm supposed to use wipes to touch the fruits, or what do I need to do to protect myself?
I'm not sure if that is prescribed, but what we want to emphasize to Jamaica is that you must maintain social distancing. Not distancing from fruits, but maintain distancing from people, because we know that if you are in close contact with someone who is symptomatic, you will be a victim of, you know, the corona. And I can't emphasize enough that at least 80% of persons will recover. The other 15% will have moderate disease, require oxygen. They too may also recover. But the other 5% will become critical to the point they will need high dependency care. We want to avoid that. And I want Jamaica to recognize that as much as we're discussing business and recovery, etc., it is really driven by our response to contain the disease within our country. And that has to be the primary focus, because interspersed in this discussion is how we will respond and our economy will recover so that everyone will be gainfully employed in the future. So we must focus again on trying to contain the coronavirus in country and prevent its spread. So I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you very much.
Could I just want to add on to that? Our present Minister of Local Government was the then Mayor of Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation. I remember the delegation minister who were in Mexico. And some of the best social distancing practice is when you see a stall without even people serving you. You just take up what you want, put down your cash
As in
and
Europe.
go your way.
Yeah.
Then when we
Yeah,
look
Mexico.
at petticoat in England, I
Yes.
remember in central London, some of the best practice, well, you know now, that is in Poland, because you know what is happening there.
Well, the fruits are used to create distance.
There were distance, but as the minister have said, those social distance exist in the early past. Because you must remember that trading is coming as far as communal, when it was barter system. There was not money used as a means of exchange. So you have those, each economic mode, you have to look at how people trade and what trade is today. So the same coronation market, as he said, even when it was refurbished, there is relics inside here to tell you where the market is coming from to where it reached today. Because one of the time, the tram used to come inside the market to deliver goods. But the problem we are having, we don't have an AMC cleaning house, that when the truck come in from the rural area with all the different types of food stuff, ground provision, union, fruit and vegetables, they are clean offside before they enter the market. And this is why the drainage and all things what you are talking about in these markets, we are not expecting a price mart or a mega mart there, but we can do much better. We are the one who are in there. We have to take care of it. Who take care of your home in which you live in? So the toilet and the bathroom is supposed to be your cleanest place. So let us take care of the market.
So I think what this,
go ahead,
if I may, I think what this whole exercise, this is new for the country. What this focuses Jamaicans to do is to revisit what was normal practices. We are in a disaster zone now. We have to change the way we think, act, respond, and behave. And I think based on what you're just saying, we now have to think collectively, how do we change the mindset of the persons to create that dynamic change that you're saying?
I just want to just touch quickly on what Mayor Scott said. The question of education, sensitization. Dr. Vernon and the team of the SDC is presently working on a program for sensitization along with the ADPEM that we are going to be rolling out, especially within our market district and within the various communities, because I think it is important that the message goes out and that people understand that, look, this is what is expected of all of us, not just from the vendors or just from who is buying, but from the wider constituents of Jamaicans who has to interact in the markets. And when we speak about markets, we must also remember that there is another constituents of arcades across the corporate area and in most towns that have major markets. So the question of sensitization, education is being worked on, and by next week we'll be rolling out some leaflets within the markets and the various other means of getting the message out to that constituents of Jamaicans.
Okay, thank you very much. A faraway question from Westmoreland, Harvey Durrell. What about Belmont Market in Bluefields, Westmoreland? Any plans?
Well, those markets, as I said before, are markets that are not so much populated. And, you know, I have to say this as the minister with responsibility for markets, that the time is going to come when we have to, you know, make some decisions whether or not these markets are viable. Because it makes no sense you have a market that is up, you have to be paying water rate, light bill, you have to be paying people to work there, you have to clean the markets, and then you are not getting back anything in return that can properly run the market. So presently the ministry is doing a review of all the markets across the country. We have mapped the markets, we have looked at the population. I can tell you often what the population of these markets are, and I am sure, looking at my numbers there, I don't see, what's the name of the market? Belfield. That is not on the list of markets that was given to us by the Westmoreland Municipal Corporation. But just to say that many of these markets, it is not feasible to operate them at this time.
Okay, we have another question. We might have delved in some of the answers to it, but Charnel from Twitter, she's asking, how will you ensure that distancing is being observed in the markets? Will there be persons in place to ensure the distancing is being observed, or will vendors be left to their own doing?
We have a role, and we have been playing our role. We have staff out, our clerks and managers, along with volunteers from communities, have been going around in our markets, and especially the Coronation Market, and have been speaking to our vendors, and have been speaking to the patrons. In a lot of cases, it's easy, even though the vendors need to cooperate more, and we urge them to cooperate. For a lot of the markets, they are stationed, so where they are well positioned. And once they keep their position, then we shouldn't have a problem in terms of the distancing. The issue is also with the patrons, the persons who are coming in now. And we have been considering measures in terms of closing some of the exits and entrance to the market. Part of that problem is what Minister said before, is that a lot of our markets emerge out of this open market kind of heritage. And so it's difficult to enforce that because there are so many areas, especially in the Coronation Market downtown. But we have been, it requires what we do in terms of enforcement and education, but it also requires that our vendors and patrons are going to cooperate. And so it's what we do, and we're urging them to cooperate. And to cooperate for obvious reasons, as the doctor has said, is that we really want to flatten the curve, we really want to get past this. But getting past this to normal times require that we act responsibly. We are doing our best to keep the markets open. We understand the value of the markets to the country, to the municipality. And so we are doing our part, and the vendors and the patrons can see that. We are now asking. We are asking for you also to be responsible, for the vendors to cooperate with us, and for the patrons to cooperate and practice the social distancing, use the wash stations that we have within the market, and just cooperate with all the volunteers and the clerks. So the answer is yes, we are in the market, we are urging it, and it's far easier if we get the cooperation of the vendors and the person.
I want to hear out Tim on this question, because I think this is also critical, and we could call the markets, especially on a prime market day, as mass gathering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just before ADFEM, Minister, in supporting my colleague, Mayor Williams, the issue of moral suasion, coupled with the public education, is what we're going to have to drive very hard. Because as we clearly stated earlier, vendors are very difficult propositions. They're difficult to deal with. So we have to just depend on the moral suasion and the public education.
Yeah, yes, Minister. It's a large gathering, so it is classified as mass gathering. And in terms of the response that we're doing now, the main thing is to ensure that we're having that social distancing. His Worship would have said before that they would have persons in the markets to try and maintain that. So the main response to that would have to be ensuring that, and we have municipal police and we have other volunteers that would be a part of that process, to be in the market, one, to ensure that there is safety overall in the market, and ensure that there is greater public safety where we are maintaining that social distancing. Beyond the food security component, we don't want to impact livelihood, because that's a part of disasters as well. If someone is not able to provide for their family, you have greater spin-off there. So a part of what we're doing, and what the decision of of the government is to ensure that, one, there's economic viability, we're not impacting livelihood, but we also want to ensure that from a public health standpoint, we're maintaining that social distancing that is being practiced and is being asked for worldwide. But to ensure that, we have to ensure that we have persons within the market space and ensuring that we are having that social distancing, public education, appealing to persons' better judgment to ensure that you're practicing your own self-protection, to ensure that if you see 5 persons standing up at a stall and they're bunging up, you don't go and join that as well. And also for, Mayor would have said that as well, for the vendors themselves to help the responders, to help the government to say, if you have 5 persons at your stall, you say, remember, we're practicing social distancing, so I will only be dealing with 1 person at a time. Could you stand to the side until I'm through with this person? So that's a component, Minister, we have to look at. It's a broader aspect of mass gathering, and it takes control.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to just bring this note from St. James, Pachoy Seal, Facebook. He said that the curfew ends at 6 a.m., markets open at 6 a.m. I didn't hear if they were a part of the persons who are exempt, as these persons would have to get or travel to get to the market.
The markets provide a service, so there's no exemption for markets, because, as we said, the markets open from 6 a.m. each morning. So next week, the vendors will just have to bide their time and to come out at 6 to start business rolling. You know, look, there are going to be some sacrifice that we have to make as a country. So if we are going to be delayed by an hour in order to maintain the sanity of the country, then we just have to do that. I don't think an hour will make a difference, but I want to make the point. We are not going to give back that hour at any end of the scale. So if the markets open at 7, it closes at 2, same way we're not giving back an hour.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Doc, you wanted to make a point, Dunster?
Yeah, the point I want to make is that maybe the restaurateurs who operate their restaurant, and if you know as early as 3 a.m., 4 a.m., they are there in the market district.
Yeah, but
I don't think I support you what you're saying, Minister, in the sense that no more sacrifice can be made in terms of the time which is set for the curfew.
Okay.
No more time can be spent, because if we are just looking at it of giving up, and what is serious now, the bars are moving to the streets. That's a new vending operation.
We'll get to that.
We need to know where clubs and bars go at this time, because they are moving to the streets.
Okay.
Dunstan, I said earlier, and I want it to be clear, where there are buyers, you're going to have sellers.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We want to just highlight back for Doctor. The caller has sent in the second part of the question. She says, if someone with COVID coughs in his or her hand and touches the fruit, and I touch it, and then touch my face, will I get COVID?
All right. The message has to be, if you're having respiratory symptoms, i.e. cough, shortness of breath, or feeling ill, stay at home. Do not venture into the public space. That has to be clear to everyone. If it is you're on the road and you develop some type of symptoms, yes, we expect you to observe the protocols, respiratory etiquette, coughing into your elbow, but remove yourself as far as possible from that public space and contain the droplets that you may spread over other persons, because we do not recommend you be in a public space, full stop. I hope that's clear to everyone.
All right, thank you so much. We have a question. It says, the focus should be on containing the deadly virus from spreading in our markets. The toilets in our markets must be maintained, and we have a facility to wash hands.
All right, let me take that up.
Yes.
When someone coughs, the droplets contains the virus, and they are dispersed over a certain distance of at least 3 feet. We ask that you maintain the social distancing because it is unlikely that the droplets will disperse farther than what we've stipulated. And not having symptoms, you know, it's futile. We want you to wear the mask only if you're having symptoms. Okay? Let's make that clear.
And the symptoms doesn't necessarily mean you have the coronavirus.
You know, remember too that we're in the influenza period, so we have other infectious diseases, respiratory infectious diseases going on. And let me just remind the public also, and the digital persons here, that in as much as we've had 38 positive tests, we probably have about almost 10 times as many of those COVID that are negative, okay? So that itself is reassuring to us in the ministry that not everyone that has respiratory symptoms are COVID positive.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. We have from Trelawney, this is specific, it says, 2 vendors in Falmouth Market, Norma and Pinky, wants to thank Mayor Gager and the team for the new market in Falmouth. Mrs. Horton from Clarkstown wants to big up Minister for the renovation of the market and transport center in Clarkstown. So those were our big up segment.
All right.
Here are the tough questions now. St. Elizabeth, a vendor is raising concerns about condition of this Santa Cruz market and the fact that she's paying her market fees and is hardly making any sales, while a lot of persons at the front of the market who are not paying any fees are benefiting. She wants to know what the minister is going to do about it. A concerned business operator also is pleading for help because vendors are taking over in front of his business in Santa Cruz.
Well, I know the business person that sent that message. When I was there about 6 weeks ago, he spoke with me and a group of other business persons, engaged me in lengthy discussions. The fact is that the Santa Cruz market is one of the better markets, but it was a poorly constructed market. And the market is literally empty because for years the market has been neglected. No maintenance of the market was carried out. I visited the market earlier on this year. We provided some funds. We provided 6 million. The first drawdown of 3 million was sent for work to be done. I made some commitment to the vendors, and I'm going to carry through on those commitments to do the adjustments that they recommended that were areas of concerns. But the question that the vendor posed, the listener posed, was one that is not just unique to Santa Cruz, where persons who are actually paying their market fees actually can't stay in the market because the front of the market is taken up and unlawful vending takes place in the front of the market, like what is taking place at the Santa Cruz market. It is an issue that is a real concern. It is also a law enforcement issue, and is what I must admit that our municipal police officers have serious challenges in confronting. And in most cases, the normal police would assist, but finds it difficult at times to cope with that. And sometimes they are very violent set of persons we have to be dealing with. But just to say that the Santa Cruz market will be repaired, funds have been sent to the market already, and the work will continue to improve the conditions. The question of what is taking place on the road, Santa Cruz is one of the fastest growing rural or urban centers we have in the country today. And it is now looking like what Falmouth used to look like, and what downtown Kingston looks like on a market day. That is what Santa Cruz is. It is something that I know Mayor Sangster and the team down there is concerned about, but I can only say to the gentleman who sent that information and to those persons who spoke with me that we are aware of it and we are working to ensure as best as we can to make the changes that are necessary.
Okay, thank you, Minister. One of our Facebook users, Sheila Vancy, she's asking the Minister to assist. She says the supermarket in Harborview needs to be sanitized because the place where they put the garbage at times, people sell at the front gate with a lot of garbage. Mr. McKenzie, can you look into that?
I can, but again, let me just make the point. I make no apology in saying that there are some people who take government for granted. You operate your private business. It is your responsibility to dispose of your garbage, not to put out your commercial garbage for the National Solid Waste Management Authority to collect. Every business operator in this country knows that there is a policy that commercial garbage must be separated from residential garbage. And if you have your commercial garbage, it is your responsibility either to make private arrangement with private contractors who are available, or you make an arrangement with the National Solid Waste Management Authority to have your garbage collected. But you cannot dispose of your garbage in front of your business place and then persons who are there trying to eke out a living, you are calling on the state to clean up the mess that you have created. I am going to ask Mr. Gordon to send his inspectors out there. And if it is a fact that these people are depositing the garbage without containerizing the garbage, then I'm going to ask them to take the necessary actions to ensure that those persons are prosecuted.
Okay, I have two comments. I want to read them simultaneously. Kemar Whittingham, how do you plan to control overcrowding of the markets when times like this is very serious? But then I have Marion Hall, another listener on Facebook. She says social distancing is our responsibility. Your comments?
I'm going to leave that to those who know what social distancing is all about. You see, we are caught between a rock and a hard place. If we take the drastic decisions as a government to close the markets, we are going to be hurting a portion of the population that has to survive. We cannot, even in the midst of the Spanish flu in 1918, the economy of Europe in some small way survive. What we are saying to the public, this is not business as usual. Persons must now prepare to make the decisions. Person must look at my existence to say, if I go into a crowded area, I am liable to walk away with something that I don't know. It cannot be for government to regulate. And when government regulate, we are accused of overreaching. What we are saying, the Prime Minister has now become a parson. When you go to church, there's a thing that is known as an altar call. When the parson goes to the rostrum, he preaches and calls on sinners to repent, seek forgiveness. What we are saying as a government to the people of Jamaica, you have to buy in. Life must go on. After COVID-19, we have to survive as a country. So we need to start to practice some level of self-discipline in this matter.
And just to add to that is that the government, I would say, understands the sensitivities of what's in play here and is constantly reviewing on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure they're reviewing what is happening and will take whatever steps necessary at what time necessary to protect the people of this country. So I'm very confident in the government, and I know that the government is reviewing on a daily basis. And if it becomes necessary to do what is necessary to protect the people, then I'm pretty sure the government will act and will act.
And so just to add to that, Mayor, there's a photo on Facebook that shows two families, a mother and a child, and it shows quarantine. And for one family, they're taking a social a picture. And for another, they're trying to get the last coin out of their saving pan to go and buy food. So the point Minister made about the administration having to make a delicate balance between those persons who would have food to sell from their farms and those persons who need to access that food is the point that we're making. I want to go to Hanover. There are two questions from different persons in Hanover. It looks like Ever Blues. The Lucy Market needs to clean up, and then the gentleman here says, a gentleman says that funds are allocated for the renovation and the opening of the Hopewell Market. He wants to know when the renovation will commence, and then when will the market be open? Is there any consideration given to Lucy Market?
Let me say, about 6 weeks ago, I broke ground for the renovation of the Hopewell Market. Some $20 million has been allocated to the Hanover Municipal Corporation for the renovation of the Hopewell Market. It was a commitment that I made to the people in Hopewell in 2016 at a Townhall meeting. When I spoke with Mayor Samuels this afternoon in regards to the state of the market and the work, he advised me that the procurement process has been completed and that some level of work have started, but because of the advent of COVID-19, it is going at a snail pace. But the work has in fact started. I don't want to give a timeline as to when the construction will be completed, but I want to assure the listener or the individual that sent the message that the work have started. In regards to the Lucy Market, again, I made a commitment at the opening of at the groundbreaking in Hopewell to pay some attention to the Lucy Market, because the Lucy Market has been neglected for many, many, many years. I know that they are been washing, sanitizing the market, and is carrying out some minor repairs to the market. But it would be safe to say that once we get over the hurdle of COVID-19, that the Lucy Market will be on the agenda of one of the markets that we are targeting in the new financial year.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Charnel on Twitter, she's asking, with market opening hours extended to 6 p.m., just 2 hours to the start of the curfew at 8 p.m., what will be put in place for vendors who live far from where they are and work cannot make it home in time?
You know, as I said before, we have to make concessions. This is a time in the country's history when we have to give and take. There are some things that we're going to win and some that we're going to lose. And I would only urge persons, when the curfew comes in effect, if you have to leave early, please leave early, because the security forces will exercise their discretion, but there's only so much they can exercise that discretion too. So I'd only urge viewers and listeners, commencing tomorrow, for the next for that 7-day period that the curfew is going to be enforced, that you make adjustments to your programs of activities. The country must understand that these measures are in the best interest of safeguarding the people of Jamaica.
If I may say something to the Minister, I doubt whether the curfew is going to have much effect on the real vendors I've done a little bit of background check. Most vendors, unless it's when they are coming in, they usually come in from the country and they stay over until Saturday evening. And I don't think the Saturday will pose much of a challenge. They maybe just stay over until Sunday. Dunstan, you know that, don't it? Most of the vendors, the real vendors, come in from the country and they stay over. They either come Thursday evening and stay over until Saturday evening, or they come in Friday morning and stay over until Sunday. So I doubt whether...
Okay.
And if I may just add, just remember, this period is only for 1 week.
Yes.
And we're just trying to contain the local transmission, which has not happened yet. Let's be reminded by the statistics, which shows that an overwhelming number of cases were either imported into country or import related. Of that 38, 2 are still under investigation. So if you bear that in mind, you'd realize why these measures are being taken. And I appeal to you to just conform to these measures so that we have no transmission in country.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a question from Sinan. The lady says that she's been vending in an Alexandria market from she was 16 years old. She's asking Minister McKenzie if there are any plans for the Alexandria market.
I hope that the mayor and the member of parliament for Southwest Centre is not listening, because I have been bombarded from I became minister in 2016 about the Alexandria market. Again, it is one of those markets that over the years have done well, but after a while has just petered out. We have not actually looked at the market, even although I got an estimate some time ago for it. I don't know what the population of the market is, but again, I want to make the point that in the survey that the ministry is conducting on markets, we have to look at population where a market exists. Now, if there's not a wide population within a particular area, it doesn't make sense you have a market where the vending population is 50, but yet the wider population is only 20 people living in the community. I'm not saying that is the situation with the Alexandria market, because I know it's a huge market, and Alexandria is a wide area. But I will revisit the situation and look at what exists, and then try to respond in a meaningful way if it is possible.
Okay, I have George McKenzie from Facebook. He says, in addition to much of what is being laid out, the issue of packaging will go a long way in helping to keep our market sanitary and appealing. Municipalities must take steps to ensure and enforce standardized packaging.
Well, they didn't say the minister, they said municipality.
I don't think they understand fully what that is.
Take it on the review.
Yeah, you've taken note of that. Okay, we'll go to Manchester. A vendor wants to know when the porous market is going to be open for business, because it seems as if the parish council has abandoned the porous market.
As I said earlier on, in an earlier comment, that the porous market, is one of those markets that apparently have lost its flavor. I have passed here several times, and it is just the shell that is there. I will have to speak with the mayor to find out if there are plans for porous market, but I have not been approached or asked. But I will say to the listener that we will take that into consideration, and I will speak to Mayor Mitchell on that. And when we have our next town hall meeting, not to discuss market, but what we could probably do is just to give an update at the beginning of the town hall meeting on the outstanding questions that have been raised by listeners and viewers this evening.
Okay, we have one from St. Mary. Jean says, big up Minister Mackenzie and Mayor Creary for the very modern and up-to-date Port Maria market. She says that she can't wait to occupy the market and wants to know if you can say when the market will be open.
Well, the Port Maria, we built a brand new state-of-the-art market in Port Maria. We provided some additional funds to put in some additional stalls in the market. The work is progressing, and I believe because of COVID-19 it might have slowed down the work. But I want to give that caller and the people of Port Maria and the surrounding areas that before the middle of this year, the Port Maria market will be up and running. It's a brand new market that was built since this administration took office. So just to assure her that the market will be up and running soon. They have waited a long time for a market. You know, they can wait probably another 2 to 3 months to occupy the space.
Okay, thank you, Minister.
In
This is from...
to that, I just wanted to say that our mayor to the right of mine, we have undermined the crossroad market in the sense that if you go there and look at the butchery area in there, they sell poultry and meat. It's one which is well kept in terms of keeping fly infestation out. And we have done a tour of the Brentford Arcade, and the vendor there saying they want to big up the mayor for installing the lights, because there's many times when people think it's being removed in darkness, and the renovation of the ground measurement was taken, and I know he's a mayor for his words. So we're asking that the taxis which are coming in using it as a roadway to go in and out onto the roadway outside, he's also promising some barrier at the front so that people will be much more safer. So they are saying big up again.
More big up, I hear you. All right, so any other comment? All right, we are taking one for once again the Mayor St. Thomas. During the Yalis by-election, Mayor Mackenzie told us that he's going to make sure that the Yalis market is given back to the vendors. We as vendors have to sit outside and watch the market being used to sell car parts and other things, while no arrangement can be made for us poor vendors. Can Mayor Mackenzie tell us what is the position?
Turn me no.
Well, let me just say, the issue with the Yalis market is one that is, as far as I'm concerned, is a total disgrace. You have a market that was built to sell ground provisions and to serve the people in Yalis. That section also have farming communities. And what was done was an arrangement was made with the parish council then at the time to lease the market to a member of the parish council who converted the market into a car park establishment, selling car parts and all sort of things. The vendors have to sit at the gate of the market to ply their trade. The matter was taken to the courts, and there was some question about the legitimacy of the lease agreement, and the courts ruled my understanding that the lease should run out and that the premises should be returned to the municipal corporation. There seemed to be a whole lot of misgivings as to how the transaction was carried out. The ministry is still looking at it. We want to be careful in how we go about trying to get back the market out of private hands. It is a commitment I made then. It wasn't because of the campaign I said it, but I thought it was easy to do. But looking at the details, I discovered that it was a difficult situation to deal with. And I can only say to the people in Yalas that we are going to continue the efforts to have the market restored back for the purpose that it was built, and not to facilitate the sale of motor vehicle parts while the vendors sit on the sidewalk without any place to ply their trade. I just want to say I'm sorry that I have not been able to fulfill the commitment, but it is not once I've tried. It is because of the legal ramifications surrounding how the lease arrangement was made.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Noreen Thomas from Facebook has a very specific question regarding the Spanish Town Market. She says, good evening. There are about 5 entrances to the Spanish Town Market. Are there sanitizing stations at every entrance?
I know of 4 entrances to the Spanish Town Market, and all 4 entrances do have sanitized stations, washing stations.
Okay, you're not sure of the 5th, so
no, I'm not sure.
Noreen will be told.
I won't
that.
challenge the person though, because Spanish Town Market is an old market, and it has, as I indicated earlier, has outgrown its capacity.
Okay. We have a question from Portland. It is from Nigel Pringle, Buff Bay. Any news on the Buff Bay market, Minister Mackenzie, and why are the vendors not using the market?
Again, the Buff Bay market is one of those markets that I have to be careful how I say it, because the market is there. It is not in a bad condition. But the fact that the vendors refuse to use the market because they are saying that the transportation to get people who has to take the bus, etc., is far away from the market. So they rather go where the transportation takes place. I know that the mayor and the member of parliament was looking at a bit of land across from the market to establish a transportation center. And those discussions with the vendors was along that line, that the transportation center would suit their purpose, because where they are, it is not possible for them to actually make a livelihood. There are a couple of persons who still are selling the Buff Bay market, but the greater portion of that is on the road. But let me just say, we can't continue to make excuse and to turn around to make fashion to please people. And I think the country has to recognize that there are laws that operate as to how markets must be conducted. And if we have markets, we are expecting that persons will go into these markets to sell regardless of where the crowd is, because it's not actually the crowd that comes to the market. It is the people who leave their homes and shopping that will go to the market. So I think the question of enforcement, if there is something that I think we have been weak on over many years, decades now, is the fact that we have not been able to enforce, to ensure that the vendors are going to the markets. I don't believe in running down a vendor and taking away their goods. I don't believe in it. I don't think it is human. But all I'm saying is that we as a country must start to make a difference. And I heard Dunstan spoke about Mexico. Mexico has one of the best vending system in the world when it comes down to market. But there's also a day when we went there that the president of Mexico could not go into the presidential palace because vendors blocked the entrance to the president's palace in Mexico City. So the question of vending is something that we have to look at. And the point that Dunstan made, I think, when I have the next virtual meeting with the mayors, I'm going to put this on the table. We must now start to look at the question of engaging customers and say, look, we will deliver to you. Because I'm rolling out a program that the SDC is going to be undertaking as a part of the government response to help those persons who are 75 and over who we ask to stay home, persons who are going to be in need of getting ambulance assistance. So we're going to be coming to that. But just for the people in Buff Bay, right now, to be honest with you, the situation as it stands now is what it is until we can work it out.
Okay,
I just want to say too, there are hopes for downtown Kingston because there's a density of vending population there, and as the minister said and the mayor said, that's where the concentration of hopes is. We have the Jubilee Market, which is still there on the refurbishing and rebuilding. We have the Pernell Shaw's Arcade, which is there for another redevelopment. We also have the Red Rose Market, which is the fish market. And why I point out Red Rose Market too, that when we're in Mexico, the difference between the vending situation in Mexico and here is that you have specialization of markets. When you go downtown Mexico City, you can go to a fruits market, you can go to a poultry and meat market, and that's how it's being laid out. And as Minister said earlier on, Coronation start out resembling something like that, but over the years, a complexity, a multiplicity of vendors, and not to give the authority any blame. When a vendor is registered on the ISA or ID, it tells you the type of goods you are supposed to sell. It also says the location in which you are to sell, whether you're an itinerant, whether you're selling an arcade. And one of the good things we took back from Mexico was the color code system. So the metros who are operating on the road, and I think the police who's attached to, know exactly where a vendor is supposed to be. So there's no misunderstanding of where you're supposed to be. But as the vending population has outgrown, its demands have become greater than its supply. And this is where the problem is. You can imagine when, I think it was President Ford, were there at the time, and the military police have to come off of that unit. And it's like an enclave open, and you drive in, and the road covered up with people.
All right, thank you,
one thing, they are well organized.
Right. Thank you. Back to the number of persons from our text line. One of our viewers, reroute traffic away from Coronation Market, say using Upper Church Street on Saturdays for some market parking would go a long way in this time of crisis. Looking to hear some steps. So that was a recommendation.
Well, yeah, we have been looking at parking as part of what we have been looking at for this special situation that is happening now. But also beyond that, the parking is central to the design that we have been working on for the entire market district, and also what exactly has been said before in terms of making the market specialized. There are some specialized markets already, like the Red Rose Fish Market, you have the Queen's Fish Market, and the Coronation Market is supposed to be a ground provision market and organic market. And we are looking at the dry goods market. Jubilee is one of the haberdashery markets. So we are basically, as I said, we are very close to about 3 months away from ending. But all those issues are taken into consideration. But as we speak now, we are looking at the issue of parking. I know we're supposed to be in touch with the Railroad Ministry of Transport, and in terms of how we can adjust the parking.
Okay.
Just to say quickly on that, is that the local authorities who have control over the road network can use the powers that is vested in them to close certain streets and transform them into market streets on given days. And I think based on what is happening now, I think that is something that we need to look at, you know, that they can take those decisions.
That's something we do in Spanish Town.
Okay.
Since you say that, Minister, one street, I could say one street that we have been looking at seriously and looking at all the logistics in play is Chapel Lane.
Okay. Well, Chapel Lane would fall within the prescribed zone that the market regulation covers. So once there's a prescribed distance surrounding a market where the local authorities can use that prescribed area for the operations of the markets. The law provides for that. And I think one of the things that we probably need to look at, because you have vendors who only come for a one day, you know, and I think if that can be worked out, it could probably limit that amount of contact within the market.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a question from Portmore. A resident from Edgewater is asking if there are any plans to erect a market in Portmore. For the last 20 years, she has been hearing that a market will be built. Up till now, there's no market. It is difficult to travel from Kingston to Spanish Town to go to the market. So please, can some consideration be given to the people in Portmore who pay taxes?
I am blown away by that. It's not a question I can answer. I have had several discussions with Mayor Thomas. In fairness to him, he has been, you know, advocating for a market. I think based on the size of Portmore now, the capacity of that community, those considerations are there. I could not give a proper response to the question, but I did indicate that at our next meeting, what we would do before we get into the items that we will be discussing, that some of the issues that are raised, I would seek to get response from the respective mayors so we could adequately respond to the concerns of the residents.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd just like to remind our listeners, our viewers, you can text us or send a WhatsApp. It's 876-564-8348 or 876-298-6508. I have a couple of questions left. We have approximately 15 minutes left for the program. I have 3 questions for the KSAMC. The first one says, a lady would like to know when the fish market will be open and why it's taking so long. And then Miss Nora from Bauer Bank has asked if the Michael Manley market is no longer recognized.
Okay, so let's take the Red Rose Fish Market first. The Red Rose Fish Market is completed. Personally, there were some issues. I personally had some issues, and the engineers start to look at the issues that we have, Town Clerk and myself, and they are in agreement with me. So because it's a fish market, we have said the flooring, we want the flooring to be of a certain texture, if that is the word. But the nature of the flooring has to be one that is easy for cleaning and so forth. So that's the only thing that is. There are some issues with the plumbing and the parking. So we were comfortable with the state of it at completion. So they are just. It should take us probably after COVID, probably a month after to finish it. So, but it's ready. It's finished. It can be occupied, but no, not so fast. Let's make it luxurious for our fish vendors.
Okay, and the other question, Bauer Bank, the Michael Manley market.
The Michael Manley. Minister.
Look, I visited the Michael Manley market some long time ago, and I was amazed that the facility was still intact. A lot of the vendors go further out on Windward Road, and I think again it is more persuasion than anything else. I think I would suggest to the mayor that he engage the councillor and the member of parliament to see how best they could get the vendors to go back into the Michael Manley market.
So if I may quickly, the issue we have is, and we have to resolve that within our minds, is, I don't know what time is going, so quickly, the issue is we have a number of markets within the municipality, within the city of Kingston. And we have to be convinced as one, and we are looking at it, do we need all these markets? And the proximity of these markets.
That's the first issue.
So is it easier? So that's something that is under constant discussion. Yes, okay. There are some markets that we believe that we could take out of operation. It would be far easier for the municipality. And then if we take those out of operation, then enforcement and management of the other markets become easier for us from a resource standpoint. Michael, I think so it's the same kind of discussion we have to have about the Michael market.
And the DC Tavares market.
And the DC Tavares market. Is it necessary to bring those markets into operation? Or is it far easier for the municipality to take those markets out of operation, use the space for other purposes, and it would be far better for us to manage properly and structure in an orderly way the markets that we So those are the discussions that we're having and we're trying to resolve.
Okay, I have one other for the KSAMC. A vendor is claiming that she once had a stall at the Constant Spring Market over the years. The market was destroyed and she was promised to be compensated, and don't hear anything up until now.
I would say to that vendor, that issue can't be discussed here. Let's just come and speak to me personally, and I'll look at it. But I know there was an arrangement. I'm not sure what would have happened for that person to be not included. So let's just visit the office and make an appointment, and I'll speak to you on the matter. Myself on the phone.
Okay. St. Catherine, I am a market vendor selling in Linstead Market. However, the condition of some of the stalls in the market is not good, and it is difficult for us to ply our trade. Are there any plans to repair the broken stalls in the market? And then there's another question also, I'll do them both. Since the fire at the Old Harbour Market, I'm still waiting to get the little money that was promised to us. Can the mayor say when this is going to happen? Corona day about, and we need some help. That's what I said.
Let me start with the Old Harbour first, because that's a simple one. I'm not aware of any promise being made as it relates to the fire that occurred a couple of years ago. However, I'll do some research, and if that person can send their contact directly to me, I will speak to them personally. As it relates to the issue of the stalls in Linstead Market, it is a kind of long-standing story. Linstead Market, as the name says, Carmen Akigo Linstead Market. That market was renovated and quite a substantive amount of money was spent putting on a new roof. People were complaining that it was leaking. We put a new roof on. Then they complained that the roof was too hot. And we got the kind of product or whatever it is to make the inside of the upper section of the market cool. And for whatever reasons, these persons refuse to use the upstairs part of the market. And that facility is well, properly and available for those persons to go upstairs. But for whatever reasons, they refuse to use it.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one final question. One is a recommendation, actually. Henry is saying, have the municipal corporations consider daily temperature checks for vendors?
Let me speak to that. The Ministry of Local Government is securing a number of temperature machines to assist in the process. I don't know how feasible it will be to do that temperature check at all the markets. But it would be fair to say that the markets where the access is limited, we could explore the possibility of doing so, because that in itself also will be a part of what we do as a municipality right across the country in our efforts. I want to also, in response to the question, to say that the ministry will be providing funding to assist the MCs in the sanitization program of the markets. We won't be able to give it to all the markets, but we are going to be providing some funding for that. I'm going to be meeting with the National Solid Waste Management Authority in a couple of days' time to discuss the question of assisting and improving on the garbage collections within our major markets across the country. So those are some of the initiatives or steps that we are going to be taking over the next couple of weeks as we try to come to grips with this outbreak that is affecting the country.
All right, thank you so much. As we're getting time to wrap up, I'm just going to make 2 points. Annette Grant, please see what you can do about our city and the vendors selling on the streets. When I come to Jamaica, I can't go to Kingston. I can't deal with the crowd on the streets. And then Mr. T from Montego Bay says, in order to manage and encourage our social distancing in our food markets, why not utilize the premises that farmers markets used to be kept? So those are 2 recommendations. I'd like to, at this time, just invite Dr. Campbell. She is the Acting Director of Emergency Medical Services with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And as we're getting ready to have our final word from the Minister, I'd like to ask her to just say a few words in this very challenging time for not just Jamaica, but the rest of the world as we deal with COVID-19, the coronavirus. So I throw to you, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Delmaris. I just want to say to the vendors, my grandmother was a vendor. She sold at Coronation Market. My grandfather was a farmer too. And I know there are some well-thinking vendors and Jamaicans amongst us. And I want to implore you to just listen to the message that we're sending from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. It is important that you listen to the common sense advice that we're giving, because we have to fight the COVID together. This is a Jamaican fight, and you know, the Prime Minister made a very impassioned plea along with the CMO yesterday, and we're encouraged by the response we have seen so far with the statistics. And I know that in the next couple of weeks that we should be seeing the figures trend down, and certainly the curve should be flattened. And you know, within a month or so, we should be back to business as normal. So please, I encourage you to listen to the messages and take heed.
All right, thank you so much. At this time, let me just say thank you to our panelists. His Worship Senator Councillor Delroy Williams, His Worship Councillor Norman Scott, Mr. Richard Thompson, Dr. Curdell Campbell, and Mr. Dunstan Whittingham. At this time, I'd like to have the Honourable Minister close the segment.
Let me say thank you so much to Dunstan representing the vendors, 2 senior mayors in the country, to the 2 largest municipalities in the country, St. Catherine and Kingston and St. Andrew, and to Richard. I don't know what I can say about Doc, because Doc has brought a different level of discussion to the proceedings this evening, and I am really thankful that you were able to make it. I can only appeal to those who are listening and those who are viewing us online, is that we are at a crossroads in this country. There is no turning back for the people of Jamaica. We have to take the necessary steps to ensure that we protect lives, we protect property. But most importantly, this is not a fight for the government alone. This is not an Andrew Holness or a Desmond Mackenzie situation. This is the people of Jamaica. We are talking about the future of our country. We are talking about the legacy that we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren. And we can only do that when collectively, as a people, we recognize the challenges that we face. And I can assure you that the government of Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness and the Cabinet has the interests of the Jamaican people at heart and will do everything that is possible to ensure that we protect the lives of the Jamaican people and that we can live up to our true motto, out of many, one people. I thank you for joining us.
Thank you and good evening.
Welcome back to Family Fortunes. If you're watching a PG-13 show and your little brother enters the room, what should you do?
Run him out!
I would find a G-rated show because G is good for everybody. Yes. Final question. What does A stand for?
First letter of the alphabet. Phone a friend.
Wagwan Chargy
Is what A stand for.
Well, PG is parental guidance, G is general audience, and A is adults only.
Adult.
Until next time, follow the ratings.
Broadcasting Commission, your partner for a new day.
Parents, make sure the children get immunized. Hear this. Immunization, it is a must. This is not a joke thing, this you can trust. It is required by law for entry to nursery to daycare and to schools. Listen up, it is necessary to prevent diseases such as the measles, the poliomyelitis, the lockjaw, and the whooping cough. Immunize your kids, keep them healthy, keep them strong. Prevent deadly diseases such as mumps, rubella, and diphtheria. Immunize your child today. Immunization, a key to good health.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Power.
Join the fight. Quit smoking for life.
I must be the proudest Jamaican ever. And I am proud because I believe, I know that Jamaica is the nicest place on this earth. This beautiful country. Just live in peace and harmony. Walk and talk with your neighbor. Tell them morning and don't feel like say, of course we are cuss them. I would love for it to be the Jamaica that I think is the best place on earth. Come make we create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
As an inner city youth, I'm a duty to know the laws and my rights. These laws affect all our self-interest and safety.
The law says throwing garbage in public places or on other premises without consent will lead to prosecution. My seat online. I know my laws and my rights. Do you? Know your laws. Know your rights. Respect you.
This is Romain Virgo. I'm here appeal to all of the youths them to just stay away from crime and violence. We know the temptation, the money, the fast life. People say them rate you. But that will only take you nowhere. If you stay in school and focus, then you can achieve anything. Be your own leader. A gang